Chapter 757. After determining where to stay, Jiang Hai also went to the bathroom in the room. This tribe indeed had no electricity. Otherwise, how could the electric wire be pulled deep into the mountains? Most of the Native American tribes had no electricity. Without electricity, many things were inconvenient. For example, there was no water heater for bathing. Fortunately, Jiang Hai didn't care about this. After simply wiping himself with cold water, he returned to the room. The girl had already made the mattress on the floor. After Jiang Hai thanked her, he lay on the floor and the girl went to wash up. While the girl was washing up, Jiang Hai also casually looked at the phone, but he just looked at it. There was no internet here. There was a mobile phone signal, but there was no internet signal, so he couldn't get on the internet. Moreover, Jiang Hai's phone was running out of battery. His battery was only charged in the car for a short time, and now there was more than 40% left. Everyone knew that the electricity bill for a smartphone was not a small amount. If he went out to play during normal times, the battery would run out every day. No matter what kind of phone it was, it would run out of battery after a day. If it was a game or something, it would run out of battery after a few hours. With more than 40%, Jiang Hai could still use it for a night if he used it sparingly. If he played the phone for a while, it would completely run out of battery. So after just looking at it, Jiang Hai turned off all the back-end functions and put the phone aside. But if he didn't play the phone, to be honest, Jiang Hai couldn't fall asleep. As a very normal young man, he used to sleep early at night, but now, tsk. Although it was already quite late outside, it was only 9 o'clock. He couldn't play with the phone yet. It was really a bit troublesome to sleep. But fortunately at this time the girl also came out of the bathroom, then walked gently to the bed and climbed up. "You haven't slept yet." Looking at Jiang Hai still lying there, although he didn't speak, she felt that Jiang Hai wasn't asleep. To be honest, if Jiang Hai didn't sleep, she didn't dare to sleep either, even though to a certain extent she belonged to him tonight. "Yeah, it's too early. I can't sleep." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai nodded and whispered, "That's how it is in the mountains. There's nothing we can do about it." Seeing that Jiang Hai couldn't sleep, the girl smiled and said, "Speaking of which, we haven't gotten to know each other yet. After all, it's fate to sleep in the same room. My name is Jiang Hai. I'm from Wuxia. I'm now living in Winthrop." Hearing the girl's words, Jiang Hai also sat up and smiled at her. "My name is Tarak, I'm from the Tucker clan. If I dare to say that I'm an American, our patriarch will kill me." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman couldn't help but laugh and said, "Tarak, it seems to be a boy's name." Carefully chewing on Tarak's name, Jiang Hai asked strangely. He just heard that the girl's brother was called Patton. "Why is she called Tarak?" "Our tribe's surname is the tribe's surname. We don't introduce ourselves. Our names are quite free." As if he saw Jiang Hai's doubts, Tarak smiled and talked about the habits of these people. The names of the Native Americans were quite liberal. You could call them whatever you wanted. These people didn't have family names. Just like what Tarlac said, their tribe was their family name. For many Native Americans, their family name was their family name. The names given to them when they were young were not meant to be used for their entire lives. They were basically temporary. When they were 16 or 17 years old, these people would change their names. This was also a sign that they had grown up. And the names of these people are also very strange. Some are the names of animals, some are homophones, and some are imaginary things. For example, the famous leader of the Sioux tribe in the United States, Crazy Horse. It's hard to understand why he's called that, and then there's another head called Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull? It's really hard to understand the way these people came up with names. What Jiang Hai said now are all homophones. As for the specific meaning, Jiang Hai is not too good to ask. "Who did you learn English from?" It's quite standard. After talking about some Native American customs, Jiang Hai asked the girl. "I learned from the patriarch. Our patriarch used to join the U.S. military and learned English in the army. Later, he retired and returned to the tribe and became the patriarch. He led the tribe to maintain our unique culture and spread it outside. Over the years, many people learned English from him, but some of them left the tribe after learning it." Listening to Jiang Hai's words, the girl sat on the bed and said with some helplessness, "No matter who it is, faith is not enough to fill their stomach. With a tool to communicate with the outside world, some Native Americans are willing to abandon their hatred and come out. Some of these people escaped and some went to trade things or see a doctor. They discovered the beauty of the outside world and did not go back. This was a good thing for the American government and it was also a good thing for them. However, to their original tribes, these people were traitors. Everyone had a different perspective, so naturally, the way they looked at things was also different. Just like Tarak now, in her words, she is looking forward to the outside world, but at the same time she hates those traitors. The pursuit of a better life will not change, so Jiang Hai can't say anything. Alright, I haven't been to places that are too far away. Can you tell me about the outside world? Thinking of this, the girl suddenly changed her mood and said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also told her. In fact, he mainly talked about the things in Jiang Hai's manner, the electrical appliances, the modern life, the delicious food, and so on. Originally, the girl was looking forward to the outside world. Now listening to Jiang Hai's words, she was quite fascinated. Just like this, one asked, the other answered. Unknowingly, it was getting late. Jiang Hai is not sleepy before 11 o'clock, but Tarak is not sleepy. She usually goes to bed at 8 or 9 o'clock. So around 10 o'clock, she was already very sleepy, but her curiosity about the outside world made her a little reluctant to sleep. Okay, go to sleep. If you have time, you can go to Winthrop to play with me. I will take you around the modern city, and you will know what the outside world is like. Feeling the girl's sleepiness, but she doesn't want to sleep, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. He is not joking. If the girl really has a chance to go to his place in the future, he will definitely treat her well. Really? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl's eyes can't help but light up, and she asked with excitement. Of course. Seeing the girl's excited look, Jiang Hai naturally won't spoil her mood and said with a smile. Then it's a deal. If I have time, I will definitely go to you, Jiang Hai. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, the girl said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled, such a pure wish, he will not break his promise. After deciding that the girl could look for him in the future, the two of them entered their respective dreamlands. Jiang Hai didn't know when he fell asleep, but in any case he fell asleep in a daze. But in the middle of the night, he suddenly heard the sound of footsteps. This made Jiang Hai instantly wake up. Sitting on the ground, his brows couldn't help but slightly wrinkle. This tribe was a primitive tribe. In the entire tribe, the only thing that could be considered a household appliance was the flashlight. Every night, this tribe will arrange for people to keep watch, so Jiang Hai is used to the sound of people walking outside, but at this time the sound of these people walking is a little far, and it is very messy, which makes Jiang Hai a little puzzled. What's the situation? Touching his head, Jiang Hai was a little overwhelmed. After putting on his shoes, Jiang Hai walked to the door, opened the door and looked outside, but just as he opened the door he was discovered by the people patrolling the tribe, and these people quickly ran over. Although they didn't raise their guns, their eyes were not quite right, looking at Jiang Hai with some vigilance. Sorry, I came out to take a look. After talking to these people, Jiang Hai didn't care if they understood or not. He frowned and looked into the forest in the distance, but there was nothing in sight, but the footsteps were getting closer and closer. This guest, please go back. We are not allowed to walk around at night. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't go back and was still looking around, the leader here couldn't help but say to Jiang Hai, but Jiang Hai's face became more and more puzzled. What's wrong? Hearing the sound outside the door, the girl who had fallen asleep at this time also woke up. She rubbed her confused eyes, walked to Jiang Hai's side and asked him. Except for her tribal chief, other people didn't understand her language. There seems to be people in the forest over there, and the number seems to be quite a lot. Listening to the girl's words, Jiang Hai pointed to the forest in the distance and said to the girl, but after the girl heard Jiang Hai's words, she was also very confused. She glanced at the situation outside, but she couldn't see anything. Then she blinked and looked at Jiang Hai as if to ask if Jiang Hai heard wrongly. Jiang Hai looked at her eyes and naturally knew what her eyes meant, then he shook his head very clearly. I really heard some footsteps. You can ask them to send someone to take a look. Anyway, it's not far away. Seeing that the girl didn't believe him, Jiang Hai still said very clearly. Logically speaking, his ears shouldn't be so good. After all, he was now only 8 times the body limit of a human, and he didn't turn into a rabbit. 8 times the body of a human really didn't have much effect. But he just felt that there were a lot of people in the forest, and it was very likely that they didn't come with good intentions. He said that there seems to be people in the forest over there. You can send someone to take a look. It's better to believe it than not. Hearing Jiang Hai being so sure, the girl still didn't quite understand, but just like what Jiang Hai said, it's not far, just go and take a look. Hearing the girl's words, although this person still felt that Jiang Hai was talking nonsense, he still sent someone to take a look. Although this person was a little reluctant in his heart, he still trotted over, ready to come back if nothing happened. But the moment this person was about to run out of the tribe, Jiang Hai suddenly heard a voice in his mind. Danger. Get down. He shouted first and then immediately pulled the girl to lie down. Although the people opposite him were puzzled, the leader also led everyone to hide. The moment they hid, tongues of fire suddenly shot out from the forest. The person who ran out of the village was immediately shot into a sieve by the bullets outside. Enemy attack. With the sound of gunshots, the night watchers who were still alive immediately screamed at the top of their lungs. Hearing these people's words, the men in the tribe woke up immediately. This was also their instinct as hunters. They immediately grabbed their weapons and were about to run out. But before most people could get out of the house, the tongue of fire swept towards the tribe again. In an instant, more than a dozen people who had just come out of the house were swept to the ground before they could react. At the same time, some people quietly moved towards the tribe under the cover of the fire. Looking at these people's movements, Jiang Hai knew that these people were professionals. If these people were to enter the tribe, then no one in the tribe would be able to survive. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai narrowed his eyes and quickly pressed the girl into the house, while he himself moved towards the direction of his car. Although there were still some doubts about Jiang Hai, now no one would care about Jiang Hai's problem. All the people in the tribe were barely fighting back, but with their homemade firearms, they had to fire 4 or 5 shots to kill a wild boar. There was no problem in hunting, but against the enemy the gap was too big. Rows of bullets were fired, but they basically didn't hit anything. The opposite side's firepower was still strong, and those people who were moving forward were about to move near the tribe in the blink of an eye. The opposite side didn't have any hope of getting hurt, but this tribe in Jiang Hai's view had lost at least 1/5 of its combat power. Fortunately, the opposite side didn't pay too much attention to Jiang Hai, so Jiang Hai secretly moved to his car. After opening the door, Jiang Hai jumped into the back seat. Here, he breathed a sigh of relief and then took out his weapons from the back seat. He had a Desert Eagle and a semi-automatic August. With guns in his hands, he was no longer panicking. As soon as the car stopped, Qijie, Qia, Feng Yunshan, Ai Xiaoxi and others who heard that Jiang Hai caused trouble again this time, surrounded Jiang Hai. Most of the women were looking to see if Jiang Hai was missing any parts, but a small number of them were looking at Jiang Hai's face. After all, Jiang Hai is also a man with a family now. Is it really good to be so careless all the time? Looking at their stern faces, Jiang Hai was quite happy in his heart. This means that they have him in their hearts, right? After laughing and fooling around for a day, Jiang Hai and the others went to bed very early in the evening. Although they hardly slept last night, Jiang Hai was still quite energetic tonight. With his physical fitness, it didn't matter if he didn't sleep all night. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Feng Yunshan, Ai Xiaoxi, Qijie and Qia, who had not felt Jiang Hai for almost 20 days, worked very hard. Usually they were always separated, but tonight they were together. They had a good time in Jiang Hai's room. For them, today's Jiang Hai was not only a person who came back after leaving home, but also a person who had just experienced an accident. It was not until late at night that the 5 of them fell asleep. The next morning, when Jiang Hai woke up, he found that Qia had already prepared breakfast for him. After breakfast, Jiang Hai strolled around his manor as usual. He had been away for nearly a month, so he wanted to take a good look at his manor and see if there were any changes. He also wanted to discuss the future development of the manor with Dulles Gerard, Robbins Garcia, and Edouard Anderson. One was the emperor of all forages, the emperor bamboo grass, and the other was the alfalfa, which was known as the best forage grass in the world. These 2 types of forage grass were not easy to grow, especially the latter. The alfalfa had the highest nutrition. But the reason why this type of grass was not planted on a large scale was that the growth of this type of grass had very high requirements. There were requirements for humidity, temperature, altitude, and so on. Therefore, people all over the world knew that this type of grass was good, but there were not many who could use it as fodder. However, Jiang Hai did not have to worry about this. After all, Jiang Hai's spiritual energy could help them break through these requirements. He believed that with these 2 types of fodder, not only the cattle on his ranch, but also the cattle bought by Luke Shan and Du Feimin would have a good effect. But it was useless to talk about this now. After all, the ranch had not been recovered yet. Everything was fine on Robbins Garcia's side, and Edouard Anderson's side was basically on the right track. The new fishing boat was in place, and Edouard Anderson divided all the fishermen into 2 teams. He and Marlon Rupert were captains respectively. When the first team went fishing at night, the second team would get up in the morning to deliver the fish. After the second team went fishing at night, the first team, which had rested for a day, would get up in the morning to deliver the fish and go fishing at night. The 2 teams took turns. It could be said that all the fishermen were not tired and it was not too exhausting. The most important thing was that the income was considerable. The fish raised in Jianghai's manor had earned a lot of money in the past few days. It was not only the supermarkets of Prawalton Sam's Club, but also almost all the top seafood restaurants in Boston. Note that Jianghai was talking about the top seafood restaurants, and they all used Jianghai seafood. The taste had become famous, and the tourists in Winthrop were more attracted to Jianghai's seafood. In the beginning, Jianghai mainly sold lobsters when he sold seafood. But now he basically sold everything. Fishing was not like slaughtering cows. It was not so precise. It was better to catch more than 100 kilograms of fish every day. Except for the extra fish that was to be sent to the restaurant in Pra Walton, there was no more fish left. In addition to the people in the manor eating, the tourists and the restaurants in Winthrop would arrive at the entrance of Jianghai's manor very early every morning, waiting for the fish truck to come. There was no more fish left and they wanted as much as they could get. Therefore, Edward Anderson's recent days were quite good. With Jianghai selling the seafood at 3 or 4 times the market price, they could get a considerable amount of money at the end of the year. Hearing her words, Jianghai also felt that it was a good choice to go swimming now, so he jumped down from the recliner and said to her, "Then come in and help clean up." Hearing that Jianghai wanted to go, Qijie also waved to him. Seeing her action, Jianghai also walked into the villa with a smile. As soon as he walked in, he couldn't help but feel that his eyes were bright. At this time, this villa was really eye-catching. Qijie said that she wanted to go to the beach. Naturally, it was impossible for her to be the only one who wanted to go. So now in Jianghai's villa, it was a perfect swimsuit show. Except for Qijie, Qijie was wearing a black and white one-piece swimsuit. When she saw Jianghai coming in, she was still a little confused. Except for her, the others were wearing bikinis. Ai Xiaoxi was wearing a pure white, but it was not big. The triangular pocket in front of her was very round. The trousers on the lower body were okay in the front, but the back could be clearly seen. Feng Yunqian was even bolder. She was wearing the kind that didn't even have a belt on the top. It was the kind that was directly buttoned in the front. It was very tempting. The lower body was flesh-colored with a floral pattern, which looked very beautiful. Afra and the others who didn't go to the grape garden today were also here. They were wearing the clothes that Jianghai had seen before. Basically, they were bought by Prawalton. Although Jianghai also gave them a lot of money, they really didn't spend much money on these clothes. However, they really didn't know how to spend the money. Now that they were wearing these clothes, they were naturally quite beautiful. Daliana and Marion were more conservative than them. Although they were also bikinis, they were the cute type. The upper body was white with a heart-shaped pattern on it. The lower body was pure white with a small skirt. Jianghai didn't allow them to dress too provocatively. After all, they were his daughters. Since they said that they were going, naturally Azalina, Galina and Wallace Shelley were also going. Azalina was wearing a more conservative black bikini, which really gave off a mysterious feeling. Because what she was wearing now was not a bikini, but just a navel-bearing dress, that was all. "Where are your clothes?" Looking at Galina, Jianghai leaned over with some doubts and asked her. "Well, inside." Hearing Jianghai's words, Galina's face couldn't help but blush, and then she whispered. She naturally knew what Jianghai's so-called clothes were, and it couldn't be the one she was wearing now. "You still want to wear this?" Looking at her, Jianghai couldn't help but say with a little dumbfounded. "It's none of your business, Hearing Jianghai still asking, Galina couldn't help but become a little angry. After wrinkling her nose and snorting, she went out first. They were going to the beach to play, although this sea was Jianghai's. But this company made something such as mobile phones, which were very profitable and in short supply. They sold mobile phones for 30 million yuan a year. At the end of the year, according to the equity division, one share can be divided into 30 yuan, which is worth 40 yuan. At this time, the company's shares are valuable. Some people will spend 40, 50, or 60 yuan to buy them. Slowly the price will rise. However, if the company's products were not worth much and lost a lot of money in a year, the products that were bought with 10 yuan might only be worth 2 or 3 yuan when they were sold. In that case, the company would lose money. It would not even be considered a loss. Then the company would go bankrupt. Jianghai didn't know how to play with finance, but that was probably what he meant. Moses Adams was an expert in this field. His way of dealing with the Cartwright Company is to first raise the stock price. The stock price was raised from 10 yuan to nearly 100 yuan. In this way, the company's market value is equivalent to nearly 10 times. But the company is not worth that much money. Therefore, when he raised the price to nearly $100, he suddenly sold the shares at a very low price. This caused a drop in price. At the same time, the shareholders who held the shares would also panic. Seeing that the price continued to be sold at such a low price, these people would sell their shares when the price was not very low. But the problem was that the company's shares were only worth $12. If you sold them at $50, the people who really knew the industry would not sell. Even if they wanted to buy, they would buy the shares that Moses Adams had sold for a few dollars or even tens of cents. With such a strong force, the shareholders became more and more afraid and worried. In the end, the price is like a snowball, falling continuously. The Cartwright Company came out to save the market at this time to buy all the shares. At this time, it is time to see who has more money. In the end, Moses Adams, also known as Jiang Hai, was richer. The stock price of the Cartwright Company collapsed. Originally, it was worth more than $10, but in the end it couldn't be sold for more than $10. It could only be sold for a few dollars or even dozens of dollars. Even if he wanted to cut off his own flesh, he didn't want the company to go bankrupt for real. After clearing out the loose shares outside, coupled with the sharp drop in the value of the shares in the hands of these people, Moses Adams casually swept up the shares in the hands of some shareholders. More than 50% of the Cartwright Company's shares are easy to buy. In the company, whoever has the most shares will have the most say. It is that simple. Then the Cartwright family is kicked out of the company. Their shares are bought at the market price, which is a few dollars or tens of cents. The most important thing is that they have a lot of hope. Now that someone has come to make trouble, they are not to be trifled with. With Jiang Hai's order, Bell Lester directly flew the helicopter over. Jiang Hai and the others immediately got on 2 fishing boats and rushed over. The 2 fishing boats were extremely fast. But when they arrived at the border, Jiang Hai found that he was still too late. He didn't block all of them outside. Now the leading fishing boats have already put down their nets, ready to catch the fish directly. Boss, what should we do? Seeing that these boats completely ignored Jiang Hai's boat and were ready to catch the fish, Edward Anderson's face was quite ugly. He walked to Jiang Hai's side and whispered to him, "Knock over these curs." Looking at these boats outside, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed. After comparing the tonnage of the boats, he growled with a gloomy face. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson's eyes couldn't help but light up. He showed his big white teeth, then gave a thumbs up to Jiang Hai, then directly commanded the 2 fishing boats to crash into the fleet in front of them. These boats clearly didn't think that Jiang Hai would be so strong. 2 against dozens, he actually dares to crash into the boats directly. Does he want to die? But no matter what they think, what they have to do now is to move immediately. Unfortunately, they still have nets, and Jiang Hai's boat is much faster and more powerful than them. They simply didn't give the fishing boats in front of them any chance. The engines of the 2 boats roared as they rushed towards the 2 boats closest to them. The shadows of the 2 boats grew bigger and bigger in the eyes of the crew members of the 2 boats. Although it was not like the 120mm water cannon, which felt like it was going to capsize as soon as it rushed up, it was still directly pushed away, unlike the 120mm water cannon that dealt with the large fishing boat. What? There are water cannons. Looking at Jiang Hai's water cannons, the president couldn't help but be surprised. Originally, he thought that Jiang Hai's 2 120mm water cannons were already good enough, but he didn't expect that there were more, and they were comparable to his main cannon. Looking at these water cannons constantly pushing away the fishing boats, a trace of shock flashed in his heart. Then he had to smile bitterly. Although he didn't want to admit it, they were bound to lose to Jiang Hai in terms of money. I don't believe it, let's get on the boat and launch a sneak attack. Looking at his father, who seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant, the president's son didn't think so. After secretly cursing, he was ready to use his own method to deal with Jiang Hai. Although they can't use guns as long as they climb onto Jiang Hai's boat, then Jiang Hai's water cannons will be useless. Thinking of this, he also said to a few sailors who were on good terms with him. After listening to his words, these sailors immediately went to prepare the speedboats. Not long after, 2 speedboats came out from the back of the big boat, and then rushed toward Jiang Hai's boat. Looking at these 2 boats, Jiang Hai couldn't help but chuckle. Indeed, the speed of the speedboats is very fast and flexible. Not to mention 120mm water cannons, even 82mm water cannons will have a hard time hitting him. But Jiang Hai was already prepared for this. When the 2 speedboats came from the left and right of Jiang Hai's fishing boat, he was not in a hurry. Not only him, but Edward Anderson, Marin Rupert, and all the sailors were not in a hurry. It's up to you. Looking at Bauer Ramen behind him, who was ready to continue, Marin Rupert said with a smile. Just watch the show. Hearing Marin Rupert's words, Bauer Ramen also smiled evilly. At this time, the two speedboats were about to reach Jiang Hai's ship. They were only about 10 meters away. It would only take them a few seconds to reach Jiang Hai's ship. At this time, the president's son also stood up from his seat. Victory is in front of us, let's go. Pointing at Jiang Hai's two fishing boats in the distance, he also shouted loudly. Just as his voice fell, Carlisle Cotton and Bauer Ramen, who were already prepared, also came out of their respective fishing boats, holding a small water valve in their hands. Looking at the water valve, the people on the two speedboats were stunned for a moment. Then, the people on both sides wanted to turn at the first moment, but unfortunately, their speed was not as fast as the speed of the water. As the two opened the water valve, two water dragons came out in an instant, giving the other party no chance at all.